Yo, what's up boys? It's Betta here with the min-maxed final version of my power Siphon Trickster that has Mageblood incorporated and a few other new things which almost doubles our damage from the previous endgame version while being even more of a tanky boy. If you have not yet seen my previous update videos or would like to start off the build, I highly recommend checking them out before doing this version as there's lots of valuable information regarding the build. Please make sure that you do not skip through the video to fully understand the setup, and should you need any help or have questions on the build, do not hesitate to join my community Discord or maybe pop into my live streams over on Twitch. All of the necessary links will be down below in the description for you. So, in terms of survivability and damage, you can expect to have around about 63 million plus DPS with inverted resistances and around about 44 million DPS without inverted resistances on pinnacle bosses. And then for the effective hit pool, we're looking at around about 550k plus while Immortal Call is up, and around about 290k when there is downtime on it. With Uber bosses, we have around about 17 million plus DPS with the inverted resistances, and without them, we are looking at around about 13 million. And then in terms of our Uber hit pool, we're looking at around about 470,000 while Immortal Call is up, and then a solid 250k while Immortal Call is down. Alongside with these defenses, we are rocking a whole 5,000 energy shield and our trustworthy 80+% evade chance. And we are still elusive while being crit immune with stable sustain in terms of our mana recovery and our energy shield too. With our resistances, we are on a whole 84% plus all resistances thanks to our Mageblood and our Flasks. And then along with this, we also have spell suppression and spell block cap. The estimated budget is around about 500 plus divines including our Mageblood, but it's closer to around about 700 plus divines with a rare +1 power charge ring. With this being said, do not attempt this version of the build without Mageblood as it's a key factor in stabilizing the build. In terms of the content, Uber bossing, T17s and Juice Delirium content really feels like normal bossing while being able to face tank mostly everything, obviously, except for Uber Shaper Slam, Eater's Slam, Maven's Memory Game, which hurts a lot, and then of course Searing Exarch's ball phase, whereby you can survive around about 3 balls, maximum 4 I would say. It really does depend on your elusive and that. And then obviously Cirrus degens do hurt a lot, while his Meteor can also be tanked if you are lucky while being elusive. The only downfall of the build, I would say, will be heavy physical hits and degens. However, they hardly ever go noticed, unless you're a noob like me, who likes to tank everything to the face. Especially balls and Uber slams. For the rest of the bosses and contents that we are talking about, it's just smooth sailing all the way through, and I'm honestly super impressed with the build that I can confidently say it's the best build that I've ever played since I started playing Path of Exile way back in 2014. As everyone has been asking me what map mods and that you should avoid, you can do pretty much everything aside from cannot leech. Less defenses and reduced effects of non-curse auras can be annoying, but it is still doable alongside with the reduced extra damage taken from critical strikes. Remember that the Outreach altars such as Eater of Worlds reduced defenses per frenzy will reduce your energy shield to 0, and other negative resistance altars can be troublesome unless you use a Bismuth flask that has all elemental resistances instead of your silver flask. Alright, moving on. So in terms of our skill gems and all of our supports, everything remains the same except for our awakened lightning penetration. We have now switched it out for using the sacred Wisps support, and the reason being is because we are using our mastery whereby our hits treat enemy monster elemental resistances values as inverted. Because of this happening, what happens is if you've got too much penetration, what will happen is that instead of actually inverting them and making the elemental resistances negative, what happens is we end up giving the extra elemental resistances. So by running Sacred Wisps, it just balances out our damage way better, and it makes things way more comfortable for us as well. Moving on to our Mageblood and our flasks. Obviously, your Mageblood needs to have the leftmost 4 magic utility flasks constantly apply their flask effects to you. And then along with this, you should try and have half fire and cold resistance with as much dexterity and strength as well. But you don't have to really worry about those too much. So for the first flask, we are rocking a sapphire. For the second one will be a topaz. The third one is a ruby. And then lastly is our silver flask. The reason why we are running the resistance flasks is so that we don't have to worry about getting resistances on our rings or on the skill tree or even on our clusters anymore. And then obviously on the flasks, what you need to have on one of them is immunity to bleed. And then the other one, less effect of curses on you for curse immunity, and then increased evasion rating just to help bring our evasion rating up a little bit higher. And then on the other one, you need to have the chance to avoid being stunned during effect, just so that we are stun immune. That way we can ignore being stunned on the board. And then obviously on all 4 of your flasks, you need to have the increased effect rolled on it with the implicit and with your prefix modifier as well. It doesn't matter the tier of the prefix. Just make sure that your suffixes are at least T1. That way they have the highest roll possible. And then for the last flask, I'm just using an Aziri's Promise. This just gives us a little bit extra leech, and along with that, it also gives us some extra damage. I couldn't really settle on any other unique flasks. However, if you would like to run a Starlight Chalice, you're more than welcome to do, which does give the increased effect of non-damaging ailments. So in other words, it does allow us to apply a little bit more of a potent shock while giving us a slight little bit increase on our defensive side, even though the flask does not really have a really long uptime. Moving on to our cluster now. Of course, I have dropped the large cluster as we no longer need the additional resistances or even the attributes that came on along with our large cluster. So now instead, I'm just using a medium cluster for the increased projectile damage that it provides us with from R to R, and obviously repeater. And then of course we are still using the same small cluster whereby we've got Sublime Form and the additional elemental resistances and some extra energy shield on it too, just so we can fit in all of our auras pretty much comfortably. Moving on to the Lethal Pride Jewel, something that I accidentally cut out in the previous update video. However, this time I will be covering it. So on your Lethal Pride, what you need to have is at least one node which gives you at least 20 to fire resistance. This is so that you are able to cap your fire resistance comfortably. And then one of the nodes need to have at least plus 20 to strength. This way we're able to bump up our strength requirements just a little bit more. That way you're able to level up your Immortal Core just a little bit extra, so it's a little bit higher level. And then obviously what you need to have then is at least 2 nodes that provide 5% chance to deal double damage. As you can see, I've got one over here, and then my other one is down over here on Heartseeker. So just remember that it needs to be on any of these nodes, which is 2 times double damage, 1 times 20 to fire resistance, and 1 times 2 plus 20 to strength. Moving on to our rings now. Obviously, we have ditched Chevron's Revelation along with our rare ring, and I've opted to use a Precursor's emblem over here, which has got a 3% to critical strike multiplier per power charge, 3% increased energy shield per power charge, and the 1 to 24 lightning damage per power charge as well. So ideally what you're looking for with the precursors is to have at least the lightning damage and the increased energy shield per power charge. Now the reason why you want to have the increased energy shield per power charge is because without this you'll only be at maybe around about 4k ES, which is not really that comfortable, whereas with it you'll be bumped up to at least 5,000, which makes it way more comfortable. And then obviously the added lightning damage per power charge is huge in terms of bumping up our flat added lightning damage. As you can see, I'm at around about 210,000, whereas without the ring we've only got a low ball of around about 153,000, which is kind of sad. Other than that, those 2 are the most important modifiers. Of course, you can go ahead and get a Precursors that has got +1 to power charge as well. That is perfectly fine. But you only need to buy 1 of these rings, and the reason being is because you can just replicate it with Calandra's Touch. That way you're able to save some extra currency on the build. Now, for those of you who have got a shitload of currency to spend on the build and that, obviously you can go ahead and pick up a rare +1 to power charge ring. and then ensure that you get at least a little bit of evasion rating on it. And the reason why you would want to do that is to pick up your evasion and energy shield mastery over here, whereby you get 20% increased maximum energy shield if both equipped rings have an explicit evasion modifier. This way you're able to make up for your lost energy shield, and you should see that you'll be at around about 4.5k comfortably, which is perfectly fine. And then other than that, on the rear ring, you'll be looking to get any flat added lightning damage alongside any maybe some resistances for the Eater and the Searing Exarch altars, should you want that. Otherwise, you would want to use multiplier essences on it. That way you can bump up your damage even more. However, with this being said, I was a little bit too poor to afford the +1 power charge ring, as they are going for at least 200 plus divans. So the Precursors emblem, and that is a super good budget option. Moving on to our wand enchant, which is a really high priority. You should get this as soon as possible, because what the Haunted by Tormented Spirits does is it gives us 35% increased attack damage, 35% increased attack speed, and of course 35% increased movement speed, which is really good for the bold, and it makes us more speedy and allows us to deliver damage much quicker. And overall it is a huge buff for the bold, especially for the end game and for doing uber bosses, and that it makes them feel way more comfortable. You can expect to spend around about 115 to around about 120 divans. Mine costed me, I think it was only 118. So all in all, it is really worthwhile getting the enchant. Moving on to your chest piece, you need to ensure that the evasion roll is as high as possible, along with the added lightning damage to wand attacks being as high as possible as well. The intelligence roll doesn't matter. Just make sure that the evasion and the added lightning is the highest roll that it can possibly be, especially the evasion. The reason being why you need to have really high evasion is because of Escape Artist, whereby we are gaining extra energy shield per 6 evasion rating on our equipped body armor. This way it is raising our total energy shield pool a little bit higher, making things much more comfortable, especially in terms of crazy ass mapping and that. So in terms of corruptions, you can go ahead and get +1 to all socketed gems. However, the DPS increase is not really that great, and I would recommend the increased damage, because that really does help out increasing the damage overall. You will see about maybe a 4 million DPS increase on pinnacle bosses, and around about 1.5, maybe even 2 million for your uber bosses. Other than that, you can also get a corrupt for +1 to all maximum resistances, or maybe anything else. But those are the most important that you should get should you want to have a corrupted chest as well. Alright, moving on to our helmet, or even with the boots, you need to ensure that you get the corrupted implicit +2 to level of socketed aura gems. This way our wrath, our grace, and our discipline are all level 23. So just do remember that you can either get it on the helmet. They are pretty scarce on the helmet in terms of the +1 to maximum power charges, and you can expect to spend at least maybe 60 to 80 divans, whereas on the boots it won't be as expensive and it is a much better choice. Moving on to the amulet, obviously you need to have a 10% increased effective elusive roll on it, and then along with that you can have increased attack speed, corrupted implicit, or even wrath has increased aura effect implicit as well. I was super lucky in picking this up for only 1.5 divans. I did see another one that was available for like, I think it was 70 divans, and it was pretty much sold instantly before I could grab it. So the two most important things that you are looking for is increased attack speed and the Wrath aura effect. Of course, you can pick up one that's also got Grace aura effect, or even Discipline aura effect too. Those are perfectly fine. I just felt that these two together were the best to further increase our DPS, especially for the uber bosses, making it much more comfortable. And then also, please don't forget to allocate overcharge and not overcharged over here on the skill tree, as it can be pretty confusing as they are pretty much named exactly the same. So just make sure that you have overcharge and not overcharged allocated. Moving over to the shield real quick, you should get the corrupted implicit that gives 4 to 5% chance to block spell damage, and the reason being is because we only have 9 to maximum power charges, as we no longer have our Graven's Secret belt giving us the additional power charge. This way we're able to cap our spell block, otherwise we'll only be at 71%, but with 4% additional chance to block spell damage, we're able to meet the cap at 75% again. If you're unable to pick up a corrupted one and that, do not worry, having 71% chance to block spell damage is still perfectly fine and it is still really comfortable. I was just fussy and I really wanted to cap it out. Moving on to our gloves, you have to have the 2 implicits, whereby you have the 5% to 7% chance to suppress spell damage. This way you can get closer to the spell suppression cap. And then along with that, our trustworthy Rage on hit, once again giving us 30% more attack damage. And then for the rest of the modifiers, you have to have the adds lightning damage to attacks, along with attack speed, and crafted on increased damage while leeching with the highest amount of energy shield possible. And if you are wondering on how you can pick up a pair like this, because you can't really bar them as is with these rolls and that, a really easy way of doing this is if you pick up a pair of R level 84 plus Warlock gloves that already has the fractured modifier for the lightning damage to attacks. Just make sure that it is at least T1, and then what you're going to do is use Shrieking or Deafening Essences of Zeal on them until you land a really high energy shield roll, and just ensure that it has an open prefix so that way you can still craft on the increased damage while leeching. And then obviously some increased accuracy will be pretty valuable for us, along with any added fire, lightning, or even cold resistance, just to help you balance out your remaining resistances that you're missing. That way you're way overcapped for your altars once again. Alright, last but not least, moving on to the Watcher's Eye Jewel, I'm still using the gain energy shield per enemy hit while affected by discipline. I'm pretty fussy and I think that this just helps us have some extra sustain, especially while mapping when we do end up getting hit a few times and that. However, it is not necessary, but what is necessary is to have the damage penetrates lightning resistance while affected by wrath, and then obviously any other increased damage modifiers, such as while affected by precision, is really beneficial to the board. Other than that, you can also get increased movement speed while affected by grace, or even additional spell suppression while affected by grace, should you not want to use the lucky spell suppression node here, and then you can prevent an extra 3% of spell damage. And other than that, pretty much you can put anything else that you see fit. Just make sure that you do have the penetrates lightning resistance while affected by wrath. Alright, and that is it for this update video series on the build and that. I will now be moving over to creating my next build that I would like to work on. Should you have enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and to subscribe to my channel. And remember to come drop by my live streams over on Twitch so you can see what I'm working on next. Should you also need help with the build and that, as I previously mentioned at the beginning of the video, please do drop by my Discord and that. Do not be afraid to ask questions. I will not bite. Other than that, Exiles, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the previous ones, and I'll be seeing you in the next video or live stream.